Hey everybody, this is Jason, Zombie Collector, and I am a day late and a dollar short, or maybe even more days and more dollars short on doing Patrick, the card hobbyist, YouTube response video. But he did challenge us to even do it after the actual contest, which I have accepted the challenge. As most of you all know, I don't do response videos much anymore, contest videos. Every once in a while, I'll grab one if I just have the time or if it strikes me because these are the ones I like Scotty Tradition. He does ones. His ones, just like Patrick's, are all about getting to know people better. And I love that. I love getting to know people because to me, it's more important about the person and not the card or the collection or how they collect. It's more about the personalities and the just connection I have with people. And so he challenged us 5 things you didn't know about me, about you. And so I'm going to do that. So these are not in any particular order. And you all know I'm a talker, so I'm going to try to keep this somewhat condensed, but, good luck. The first one up is that when I was living in Japan back in 2009, 10, it's illegal to use your cell phone in Japan while you're driving. And I was going to after the school year party with some coworkers. And in Japan, they don't have street signs. And so I could, and if you're not familiar with the area, you have to pretty much go by landmarks. And so I'm looking around, and I cannot find where I'm supposed to be going. It's like kind of like a bar / restaurant kind of deal. So I get on my phone and I ask for directions from my friend to get me to where I'm going. And I have 2 Japanese police officers who hop out of the bushes. I'm not joking. They're like bushes next to the road, and they jump out in front of my car to make me slam on my brakes, and then they pull me over along with 2 old grandmas, and then they proceed to attempt to take us into the precinct, and they were threatening me to take me to jail and had like $10,000 fine and send me back to America. And it was a whole big debacle. I had to have my ex-wife at the time, or my wife at the time, my now ex-wife. She had to come in there and like talk him off the ledge a little bit for me. I had to have the school send their liaison that I was working in. I was working in the school in that district, in that city, and I had to have it was the Board of Education. I had to send they had to send their top person in to be like, this guy is one of the teachers in our community. What are you treating him like this? Obviously, he was trying to get directions. Let's not act like quit being Dirty Harry, because this one cop was acting like he was Dirty Harry and trying to literally put me in jail. Like he wanted to get me in jail that night, like get me in there. It was a nightmare. So that's my first story. So I almost got arrested and sent to jail, and all that. And the end of the story there, to make this is a very short story because it was much longer, but I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version. Once I told him I was going back to America, he was like, "Oh, you're going back to America in about a month? Okay, never mind. Have a good day." After like hours and hours of being in the precinct and like literally him trying to sweat me out of the like trying to get me to adhere to his request of like agreeing that I should serve some sort of punishment. And I was like, I'm going back to America. So even if the court date starts, I'm already going to be gone. Little did he know I was going to be back. I just told him I was leaving the country. He thought I was leaving for good. So he was like, "Oh, you're leaving? Well, have a nice night." Like I literally like 4 or 5 hours later. I mean, it was like I killed someone or I stole or I don't know what. It was crazy. So that was my first story. Second story is on a trip back from, I think, China or South Korea. I went on the tram in Chicago from the international area to the domestic terminals, right? And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was like me and this one other guy was sitting, like him and I were standing next to each other. You have like the rails you can hold up to like the straps. And me and this other guy was sitting on or standing up next to each other because like no one else is in this specific tube that we were in. And I started looking at the guy, and I'm like, this guy looks familiar, but how am I going to know this dude? He was like real thin, bald head. He kind of had like a 1980s like punk rock look to him, all that. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, this guy looks so familiar. But again, how do I know this guy? And, that tram ride is about 10 or 15 minutes, roughly, because it makes a bunch of stops or something. And even though no one was hardly there, it stopped. Or people got in on other sections of the tram. So as I'm looking at him, he knows I'm looking at him. He knows I recognize who he is, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But it is Richard O'Brien. And people might be thinking, well, who's Richard O'Brien? And it's not that big of a deal. But to me, it was, because Richard O'Brien is Riff Raff from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I'm a huge fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I used to sneak out of my house when I was in high school with friends, and we used to go to the Vogue Theater in Louisville, Kentucky. And every Saturday night they would put on the Rocky Horror Picture Show, that's a whole separate side story. But it was a movie that was played in the theaters, midnight screenings all across America, and I'm assuming it still goes on today. So me and friends would sneak out of our houses in Indiana and drive to Louisville to watch it performed live on stage by a local cast, and then watch the movie itself. And he was in other movies like Shock Treatment and Dark City with Kiefer Sutherland and things like that. But he's really known for Riff Raff. And he's also I believe, the writer and director of the British stage play and the actual the musical itself. So it was just funny because he noticed I knew him. He knew that I noticed. We had a special moment, like our eyes met. It was very magical. Like I thought it'd be unicorns and rainbows. But it was just kind of like, I could tell he appreciated it because he was really tired. I was tired. That he didn't have to go into the whole like, well, thank you, yes, that's me. I appreciate you acknowledging me. He just had that moment of like, I appreciate it, dude, that you know who I am, that you're acknowledging me by your mannerisms, but we're not having a conversation about it. And then when he was getting off, because he got off on a different section I did, he was just like, cheers, mate. And I or whatever, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool!" Like he knew, and so that was a really cool moment that I shared with Richard O'Brien. The next one was, as a lot of you all know, I'm a big film fan. I used to not as much anymore. Go to a lot of film conventions, or like mostly horror conventions. And one of the guys, and I have a cornucopia of stories I can tell you about different actors and actresses I have met and directors, both good and bad. But one that sticks out strongly in my head as a terrible experience was the day I met Candyman. Yes, Tony Todd, the Candyman. So I met him in Indianapolis, Indiana, in probably like 2004 or 5. And, he's never been like a huge draw, but everybody likes Candyman. But he's in lots of stuff. I mean, I really liked him in a lot of movies, or I should say I did like him. After this experience, it was awful. But he was in Candyman. He was in The Rock with like Nicolas Cage and Ed Harris. He was in, oh my gosh, Hatchet. He shows up in the movie Hatchet. And he plays like a lot of authoritative kind of characters. He was in some other movies where he plays like a cops or a detective and things. I can't remember all the movies, but he's in a lot of stuff, and his voice is very noticeable. He was the voice of, I believe, Death in the Final Destination movies and all that. So, anyways, if you know Candyman, you know him anyway. So I don't really get into it any more than that. So he has his table, and the way it usually set up is you just walk right up to the celebrity, and you hope you can have exchange some pleasantries, and then they sign your item, or you sign one of they have their items and you sign it. Back in the olden days, it was like $20 a pop, and you got a free picture. Now those days are long gone, but back in the olden days, you would do that. And so we got to be like noonish, and they hadn't brought out lunch to all the celebrities. And so I can understand people getting kind of angry or a little bit, worn down, because they're at that table for like 4 hours straight, because they usually open the doors at 8 or 9. And so like for 4 or 5 hours, it's like noon, 1 o'clock, something. They're probably getting hungry. I totally understand that. And they go up and tell him like, hey, do you want to take a break? And we'll cut off the line. And these X amount of people will get it. Everybody else will have to come back. And he was like, no, that's fine. I'll just wait. And so they're like, okay. And so I don't know if there was a miscommunication or what. So they took that as he was just going to keep working. They're going to bring the food to him instead of him taking a break and then leaving for 45 minutes or whatever to eat his food in peace. So he goes up there, so they leave. They come back, and I kid you not, they bring him a sack of White Castles. So Candyman has a sack of white. That is what they provided the celebrities. And there's a lot of people there. I mean, a whole lot of people you would recognize. And there was like wrestling stars, directors, actors, and actresses from all kinds of movies. Again, mostly genre films. So they bring like a 10 sack of White Castles to Tony Todd, the Candyman. So instead of him just saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to cut the line off at like 5 more people. I'm going to get up and leave. I'll come back after I eat." He ends up taking his phone, starts like just turns his back on the crowd, starts talking to the phone, and starts shoving White Castles down his throat, and just has us all just standing around. We don't want to leave because we don't want to come back and start on the line all over again. So he should have said, "Here's the end of the line. Whip it out." Not whip that out, but whip it out the line, whip through the line, and get it done. He doesn't do that. He just stands up, turns his back on all of us as he shoves White Castles down his throat, talking on the phone like we don't even exist. And the PS on this is that the chick, I don't, and this makes this movie or this experience even more hilarious. That I am so perturbed that Tony Todd just turned his back on the fans. He has ketchup and cheeseburgers down his throat, and they're all over the place. There's like onions everywhere, and he's on the phone. He's ignoring everybody. He just makes everybody stand there and watch him eat while we're trying to get an autograph. He doesn't say, "Hey, let you all guys come back." Now that he just stands there and expects us all to wait for him. The Jennifer Lim, who I don't think she's famous for anything except being in the movie Hostel as the Asian chick with her eye hanging out, and they have to cut her eye off or something crazy in the movie Hostel. But it's this Asian chick. She's from England. I didn't even know she was British in real life. But she's from England. She's sitting next to Tony Todd, and she sees him do that to the fans, and she like goes off on him in front of everybody. She's like, "Who do you think you are? Like turning your back on all your fans, eating your food, blowing everybody out, having everybody stand there watching you while you eat? Like you should be ashamed of yourself." And she just like lights him up in front of everybody. So you have this like 6'4" black dude and this like 5'2" little Asian girl, and she just like goes at him sideways. And he like hangs up the phone, like he finishes like his burger. He like sits down and then it's like, "Okay, guys, let's go ahead and continue." Man, it was like getting yelled at by your mom. It was hilarious. The fourth one is when I was about 9 years old, maybe 8. My brother and I, well, my whole family, my brother and I, my mom, my dad, and my sister, were all going to Florida for our family vacation. And if you're from Indiana, like it's like written in your DNA that when summer rolls around, your family goes on a trip to Florida, either in the summer or like in the fall. It's just like that's a thing that we do. So we were all ready to go to Florida, and my mom and dad had the wood paneled station wagon, but they also had an Escort, a Ford Escort, and that was behind my mom and dad's behind the station wagon. So me and my brother got in the car, and we were pretending to drive to Florida, getting ready for my mom. Well, my mom and dad was like getting all the bags and suitcases and all that together to bring out to the station wagon and load it up because we're like literally leaving that morning or what? It was early morning. And head out the door and then drive like my dad used to drive like 12, 14 hours straight, stop somewhere in Georgia, and then we finish the drive to Florida. Usually we're always in Orlando because we're going to Disney World. So my brother and I get in the car, and the Escort is stick shift. And so me or my brother, I can't remember which one, we're moving the stick shift around, pretending that we're driving. I'm in the driver's seat, he's in the passenger seat, and whichever one of us ends up somehow getting it dislodged, and our driveway was like kind of like on a little bit of a hill. There's a little bit like very slight slant down, but it was like a little bit of a downward slant. And all of a sudden the car starts rolling backwards. So my brother, who's younger than me, has the wherewithal to go, "Let's jump out of the car." So Brandon, his name's Brandon. Brandon jumps out of the car successfully, jumps into the grass, and he makes it. And I'm like freaking out, scared to death. And he, and of course I have like the handle, the wheel in front of me and all this stuff. So I have a little bit less room than he did. And he's like, "Jason, jump. Come on, Jason, jump. You'll be okay. You'll be okay." And I'm like, and so I'm like, okay. And I jump out the car to make it safely into the grass. And the car door swings back at that exact same time and smacks me underneath the car. And I get ran over the top of my chest by the vehicle. And then the car just like rolls across into my neighbor's yard. Thank God it kind of just like bumps into a tree to make it stop. It's like going, 2 miles an hour or something. But, the car just like hit the house. So like my mom and dad's driveway was like cement, concrete or whatever, with like kind of like a partition, I don't know, a partition, but it was kind of like a barrier between the yard and the driveway. So like my head hits the grass and the barrier there, the rock, and my body's right on as my body's underneath on the driveway, and the car runs over the top of my chest. And long story short, there, nothing happened. I didn't have a crushed chest. I didn't have any bones broken. Nothing happened. I ended up being like totally fine. Of course, it ruined our family vacation because they had to, of course, my mom and dad like freaking out. They thought I was gonna be dead. I thought I was gonna be crushed. They thought I was gonna have some sort of injuries, broken bones, some punctured lung, something. They rushed me to the hospital, and aside from just being like really sore and bruised internally, I ended up being fine. And it's like literally a miracle from God that I ended up like nothing happened to me. And, of course, that ruined the family vacation, and we didn't end up going to Florida, I don't believe, because, I had to have like days where I just was like laid up for a couple days or a week or whatever. That of course, ruined the family vacation. So that happened. And the fifth one is that in 2004, I believe, 2003 maybe, I had a friend who was a missionary in China. And in China, if you don't know this, is that it's a communist country and they're anti-religion. So if you're a Christian and you're actively trying to proselytize, which means that you're actively trying to share Christ with people, you can, if you're a foreigner, you can get arrested, locked up, and then they'll send you packing. So you have to be very careful. There's a huge Chinese Christian movement in China, but it's all underground. If you're a true Christian in China, you have to be underground. You cannot just go worship freely in China. They will make your life miserable, and they will lock you up, and they will put you in a concentration camp. And that's what's going to bring me to my story. So my friend knew of a gentleman who was famous the world over. His name is Pastor Samuel Lamb. He lives in Guangzhou, China, and he was a pastor for, decades. And his churches had got so big, we're talking about tens of thousands of people. The Chinese government looked at him as like a radical, even though he was just a Christian pastor preaching Christianity. He wasn't preaching against the China or the Chinese communist government. They just said that he was just too powerful because of his message. And he had, like I said, tens of thousands of people coming to his church and listening to him preach. He was just, too dangerous. So they locked him up for over 20 years in a concentration camp where he would just basically he would tell us he'd make big rocks into smaller rocks. That's what they made him do. And when I saw him, I thought he was like in his 50s. He looked so good. I mean, he looked so good. I mean, maybe in his early 60s. He was born in like the 1920s. And when I saw him in 2003, that would have put him at probably 80-something years old. I kid you not. He looked like he was in his 50s. Like God had been so kind to this gentleman. And they had let him out of prison because essentially they were so scared that the Christians there would rise up against the government. They thought it would be safer just to let him go back as a pastor, but they monitored everything about what he did. He wasn't able to no longer have like mass gatherings. If he did, he could get arrested, and his people would get arrested, his churchgoers. So they only could come and visit him in small groups, and he would, witness to them and share Christ. And I'm sure he had some sort of way of getting the message out to the masses. But I got a chance to meet this gentleman. It was amazing. And, he sat down and he could speak English. And so we spoke, and he was just so wonderful. I mean, it was honestly, it was kind of like meeting Mother Teresa, but the Chinese version of Mother Teresa. It was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever shared this story before. And I mean, if any of you made it this far, then congratulations. But he was 5 foot tall. I mean, I'm 5'7", so I'm a small guy. He was 5 foot tall, very small, and almost felt fragile. And he would come up and he would tell me about, his faith and how he became a Christian, and his how he approached sharing the gospel with others. And it was just an amazing experience. He was so humble, and his people were at the church, the people who did like the day to day routine, and then I think in like 2006 or seven, he ended up passing away at 88 years old. So I got to catch him towards the very end of his life, but you would never know uh, um, that how old he was. He ended up passing away, I believe, at 88 years old. I think he was born at 1926 or something like that. So it's just amazing. And the cool thing about it is they let people gather for his funeral in China, which they would probably not do for almost anybody else. But because he was kind of like the Mother Teresa or the Gandhi, if you will, of China, they rerouted or reconfigured the get together so people could come and pay their respects. 30,000 people came to see Pastor Samuel Lamb when he had passed, to go view to go to the viewing. And I mean that to me says so much about the kind of impact he had to the Chinese people and the underground church in China, which is a vibrant thing. And I don't really talk a lot about those kind of things in my personal life because it's a baseball card channel, but this is an opportunity to talk about it. So hopefully you all enjoyed. It was an amazing opportunity to share some fun stuff. Hopefully you all found some interesting little tidbits there. And I do thank you for your coming to my channel and checking it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Those are the things. That's the only thing I really care about. Let me know what you think. I'll be more than happy to elaborate if you would like on another video or whatnot. So until next time, peace, love, and look at that. Still got that long hair. Just look, hair grease.